Cleopatra, the unknown life of the last pharaoh of Egypt. Cleopatra, the last pharaoh of Egypt, was one of the most captivating women to have ever lived. She led a life of power, love, and death, and she has been depicted as everything from a man-eater to a true queen. Here is the untold story of Cleopatra's life. Cleopatra was born in 69 BC in Alexandria, Egypt, to Pharaoh Ptolemy, Tun, Auletes, and his Greek concubine, Cleopatra V Tryphena. The Ptolemaic dynasty, of which Cleopatra was a member, had ruled Egypt since the death of Alexander the Great in 323 BC. Interestingly, the Egyptian people did not seem to object to this arrangement, and they had accepted being ruled by a Greek family for over 300 years, even though they did not even learn the ancient Egyptian language. Cleopatra received a good education from a young age and was always interested in politics. Her father, Ptolemy XIII, even appointed her as his regent to rule the kingdom while he was away. As she grew older, Cleopatra's beauty began to blossom. She had white skin, which was rare in Egypt, and she was intelligent and had a sharp mind. She also spoke 9 languages, including ancient Egyptian, which her family had never bothered to learn. This allowed her to connect with the Egyptian people and win their love. When Cleopatra was 18 years old, her father, King Ptolemy the Fiend, died. In his will, he left the throne to Cleopatra and her 10-year-old brother, Ptolemy III. This was in keeping with Ptolemaic tradition, as the family did not intermarry with Egyptians and instead practiced incest to keep their bloodline pure. Cleopatra married her brother, and they ruled Egypt together. However, the two siblings soon fell out, and Cleopatra was exiled to Syria by her brother and his supporters. Cleopatra was not about to give up without a fight. She gathered a force of supporters and marched on Egypt to overthrow her brother. In 48 BC, just as the war was about to begin, Julius Caesar, the sole ruler of the Roman Republic, arrived in Egypt. Cleopatra hoped to win Caesar over, but she knew that her brother and his men would try to prevent her from seeing him. So she came up with a clever plan. She had herself wrapped in a carpet and carried into Caesar's presence by her Sicilian slave, Apollodorus. When Caesar opened the carpet, he was surprised to find the Egyptian queen standing before him. He was immediately smitten by her intelligence, courage, and beauty. Thus began one of the most sensational affairs in history. Cleopatra used her charms to win Caesar over, and he used his power to help her defeat her brother and become the sole ruler of Egypt. With Caesar's support, Cleopatra also gave birth to a son, Caesarion, who was rumored to be the child of Caesar. After Caesar's assassination in 44 BC, Cleopatra returned to Egypt. She eventually married Mark Antony, who had become one of the 2 rulers of the Roman Empire. Antony was also captivated by Cleopatra, and they began a passionate affair. The 2 rulers lived together in Egypt, and they eventually married. The Roman Senate was concerned that Antony was planning to unite the eastern half of the Roman Empire with Egypt, creating a new empire. When Antony gave Cleopatra control of some Roman provinces, the Senate had had enough. They declared Cleopatra an enemy of Rome and declared war on Egypt. In 31 BC, Antony and Cleopatra's forces were defeated by Octavian, the ruler of the western half of the Roman Empire. Antony committed suicide, and Cleopatra followed him in death a few days later. There are many different theories about how Cleopatra died. Some believe that she was poisoned by a snake, while others believe that she committed suicide by taking poison herself. Whatever the cause of her death, Cleopatra's legacy lives on as one of the most fascinating and iconic figures in history. Cleopatra's legacy. Cleopatra is often portrayed as a beautiful and seductive woman who used her charms to manipulate powerful men. However, some historians believe that she was actually a shrewd and intelligent ruler who was dedicated to her people. They point to her efforts to improve the lives of the poor and her support of the arts and sciences. Regardless of her true nature, Cleopatra is undoubtedly one of the most important figures in Egyptian history. She was the last pharaoh of Egypt, and her reign marked the end of the Ptolemaic dynasty. She is also one of the most famous women in the world, and her story has been told and retold for centuries. Cleopatra's life was a story of power, love, and tragedy. She was a complex and fascinating woman who left a